Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion time. It is now Thursday afternoon, November the 5th, 2020. Everybody doing all right? Everybody getting along? No feuds on social media? Anything like that? Hopefully, right? Everything's just fine, isn't it? At least it is in the tropics for the most part. Still dealing with some very heavy rain down in Central America. We've seen some of the video coming out of there of the extreme flash flooding. Luckily, and whenever you talk about loss of life, you got to be careful, because any loss of life, especially in this business, I take it personally. It's terrible to see. I try to educate people to be ready, and I wish that I could affect everybody in the world when we're talking about tropical cyclones or any other weather event and keep people from dying. That's the whole idea of preparedness and awareness. And so when you talk about loss of life, you gotta thread that needle there. But it is good news that we're not seeing the reports that I was worried about, and that was going to be potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of lives lost. Hopefully that will continue to be the case, that we're not seeing a high death toll down in Central America right now. It seems low, and that in and of itself is good news in an otherwise very tumultuous news cycle that we are locked in for the foreseeable future. At least from the tropical perspective, it's not looking too bad. So what do we got? Well, this is the infrared satellite animation, and there's a couple things that should be obvious. We don't have a defined center of circulation down here associated with the remnants of Eta, but there is a bubbling area of convection, shower, and thunderstorm activity now over the ocean of the Northwest Caribbean Sea. Also, we do have strong upper-level winds cutting across the north side of this disturbed area of weather, the remnants of Eta, and then this otherwise large cyclonic gyre that has manifested itself down here and come together. We do have that. It's just a huge area of energy and converging air. Air comes together. When it converges, it rises and you get thunderstorm activity. But to the north of all of this unsettled weather, again, is all this strong upper-level wind energy, and that will help to preclude any significant development. I don't see this, despite what the Euro was showing in the GFS from time to time. I am a little bit more optimistic that we're not going to see a really quick bundling of energy. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but I'm not seeing a lot of alarm bells going off that we're going to have to worry about a major wind and surge event for the Caymans. Of course, that's first in line, Cuba, and then eventually South Florida, the Keys. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be impacts. Again, you got to be careful here in threading that needle and walking that fine line between overhyping something and underplaying it, and then people get caught off guard because some of the impacts I'm going to show you at the end of today's update with a tweet from the Weather Service Miami. We got some problems coming, but it's a different variety of problems than I think we are used to seeing. At least when we talk about major impacts, you think wind and storm surge. You know that word, hurricane. That gets everybody's attention. Tropical storm, not so much, and we're trying to change that. At least I am. So, looking at the vorticity pattern down in this region, one concentrated area here, the low pressure area, what's left of it, the identifiable low latitude, longitude wise, this map here is plotting it, I'm guessing automatically, is way over here close to the coast, not far from El Salvador and Guatemala. But the concentrated area of vorticity, we can actually zoom in on this and I can show you better. We'll highlight it in white here. That is right here. So this might be the piece of energy that's going to come out over the water and then take advantage of somewhat of a favorable environment and head into the general direction of the Florida Straits. Maybe it's this way. We'll see. But the main idea is that we're starting to see maybe something take shape here that we can track. So we'll watch and see how that evolves. I think it still has another day, and then it will be over this part of the Caribbean entirely, and we'll see what the computer models do once they detect a low-level center. And that is very, very important, that when the computer models have a center to work with, what we call a vortex, then they do better. And it just makes sense. Otherwise, they're kind of guessing, okay, where is the center of most vorticity going to be? And then some of the models run wild with it. And when they don't latch on, they are very downplaying. And so you get these weird scenarios. So we have about another day until I think we start to resolve this even better. But like I said, it is looking a little bit more favorable in terms of the outcome, that I don't think we're going to have as potent a system that it looked like we could have just a few days ago, especially as Eta was headed towards Nicaragua. It was very powerful, and the modeling was indicating the potential of a significant hurricane. That is still possible, but it's not looking quite as likely. So a few little tools here from the Levi Cowan dashboard. I really like what he's done over the years. We all do. We all appreciate it. And the fact that it has remained free, to the public. That's nice as well. So you have this nice little dashboard, shows you a satellite picture, the stats, etc. Sorry, I'm never going to get that right, am I? I gotta have to practice it. Etc. All these different satellite pictures, etc. And so here it is, the track map from the National Hurricane Center, and we can view that image separately. This is what they're showing. I think it's going to change a little bit, and it's not even indicating that the center would pass over any part of Florida, but that doesn't mean there won't be impacts, and like I said, we will get into that. A few things to note. Interesting on this particular update, this is the marine surface plot from 1815 Zulu time, and it shows the center, the low pressure area right here on the northwest coast of Honduras, but the vorticity chart here that I showed you from University of Wisconsin, for what it's worth, is a little bit farther to the south and west. Yeah, we'll see how all of that shakes out. It probably doesn't mean much right now. The global models, the different tracks, there's just a few to look at here. And generally speaking, the envelope is fairly tight for the next few days. And then you get a divergence there. Everything kind of spreads out. But the implied threat, if you will, is for Cuba, the Isle of Youth, which is right here, and then west central Cuba across to the Florida Straits. Grand Cayman and the Cayman Islands as a whole, not looking too bad for direct impacts, but that large circulation, and you know this well if you track these things, that's going to affect a big area. So there's the Cayman Islands right in there. You could still receive more rainfall, and maybe even as far over as Jamaica, but nothing directly associated with the remnants of Eta here and what it may or may not be doing down the road. All right, where did that go? Let's see. How did I mess this up? I was trying to go back to, oh, there we go. That's what I want. It pops out. I'm just learning this dashboard. It's my fault. So there you go. It pops out. Very good. Good coding by Levi there. It pops out to a new browser window. So the GFS ensembles here are wacky. That's for sure. And the ensemble mean nowhere near Florida, in terms of immediately. It's several days down the road. Bottom line, this thing's going to be hard to figure out. Even the ship's intensity, which is the statistical hurricane intensity prediction, that's what SHIP stands for right there. You ever wondered? SHIPS, you hear about that? That is the statistical model, and it sees things like the ocean temperature, humidity. It's a very finite and confined set of parameters that when you see the ships go way up, then that's an alarm bell, because at least it shows statistically the environment is favorable. And when you see ships being very conservative, the ship's model like it is here never makes it a hurricane. That's good news. And then you have the various hurricane models, the HWRF and the HMON, and they're not too enthusiastic about this either. So the operational of the GFS, we can look at that here. This is from the 12Z run. It's just a big chunk and mess of just bleh, right? It's messy. It never consolidates to speak of, except maybe down there near the Keys over the weekend into early next week, and then it kind of dilly-dallies around, and now we're out at day 6 and day 7. Okay, whatever. It doesn't show me a big system to worry about in terms of wind and surge. That's good. I don't see a hurricane threat from the global models. The same is generally true from the Euro. 24 hours out, 48. See, it's broad, loosely defined down here in the Caribbean. Just to circle it in case you're wondering, that's it right there. Not many height lines in there. It's just large and kind of lumbering along. Big rainmaker, sure, but it's not concentrating It does try to get a little bit better organized by day 3. This is Sunday morning to the south of Cuba. And then it kind of pops back off to the northwest. Yeah, probably a decent tropical storm at that point. This is Monday. And if this were to verify precisely 4 days out, and you know it'll change, yeah, you could get some pretty brisk southeast winds in here across the Keys. Some storm surge in some of the more prone areas to flooding, and some squally weather, heavy rainfall for South Florida, that kind of thing. Yes, there will be impacts. I don't think the impacts are going to be too severe, however. So far, things change. We know that. That's why we do these updates, and that's why we follow reliable sources on social media. Finally, by day 5, it's a little bit more potent looking, and day 6, definitely. And day 7, still, and we're talking a week out, and that's as far as we're going to look in terms of intensity or whatever. That looks like a solid tropical cyclone, granted, and it's on the west side of this fat ridge out here over the Atlantic, right over the Bermuda area. There's Bermuda. There's your Bermuda High in mid-November almost, and that'll pump in good southwesterly winds or southeasterly winds on the southwest side of the high, which will mean warm and kind of humid for the southeast and certainly Florida. And then there's that cyclone stuck in the southwest side, the western fringes really of this high pressure area. So it probably will just come in and around somewhere along the Gulf Coast somewhere, believe it or not. Not Louisiana, hopefully, but this is a week out. Who knows? I will say this. This is the one time where the cooler water temperatures, because they have cooled more, should prevent any significant hurricane in terms of hurricane effects impacting the Gulf Coast, whether it's Tampa all the way north around the Nature Coast, through the Big Bend, the Forgotten Coast as it's called, Mexico Beach and vicinity, Mobile, all the way over to Louisiana. Yes, the water temperatures have cooled enough now that unless this thing were to be very intense and move very fast, it's going to be very difficult to get a hurricane landfall. Not impossible, but much more difficult than we saw even just a few days ago now with Zeta, right? Zeta, Eta. My goodness. I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, I got to keep up with them. And Delta before that. This is different now. Yes, the shelf waters have pulled away now, the cooler temperatures farther south. And I'll show that in tomorrow's update. And I think tomorrow is, again, the pivotal day because the models should get a good handle. Let's just go back in time and look at how this evolves. This is valid tomorrow. So this is tomorrow, not much down there. But then after that, 48 hours out is when... So between now and Saturday morning, I think we'll start to get a better handle on it. That's the bottom line. Now, in terms of the impacts that you can expect, I think one way or the other, good informational tweet here from the National Weather Service Miami, and I wouldn't expect anything less. Nice infographic explaining the wind and flooding potential from Eta, and I like the bottom part in yellow. The forecast changes are likely. It's going to be changeable. It definitely will be. But the extended period of heavy rain and gusty winds, this is the part that I think I would pay attention to the most if I were in South Florida, the Keys and vicinity, maybe even parts of the Bahamas, that an extended period of rain and gusty winds is possible for portions of the area by the weekend. However, uncertainty in the forecast remains, and it's definitely one of those weird situations. It's later in the season. You have more variability in the steering and in the intensity potential that this isn't easy to forecast and figure out. The satellite view and a little bit more in terms of what they're thinking is all here, very well laid out for you. If you're not following National Weather Service Miami, I suggest that you do. And even this part in here about isolated tornadoes, maybe waterspouts down in the Keys, can't rule that out either. Finally, the last graphic, flooding rain, definitely a potential big problem here. And I know you all have had a lot of rain this summer, despite the lack of direct impacts from tropical cyclones. It's been wet, regardless. So the flooding potential is greatest along, of course, the population centers of the I-95 corridor from West Palm Beach down through Miami and beyond. And even Homestead has become, and even Florida City has become quite populated But Homestead is a little bit into the yellow here, which is, I guess, medium potential. But we'll watch this and see how it evolves. But luckily today brings, like I said, a bit of good news that I don't see as much urgency here in terms of worrying about a hurricane coming. It's not impossible, but it's looking better, to the extent that when I was planning on, and I talked about this a little bit, especially with some of our patrons, I was leaving tomorrow for Florida. I've put that to Saturday. Kind of like when they do the recon, and they tentatively schedule recon. They have their plan of the day. Maybe we need, HurricaneTrack's plan of the day. And the plan was that I was going to leave tomorrow for Florida, but I think I can delay that by a day and just see how things evolve and wait and see, just like everybody else. All right, so I'll update you about that and all the other things related to Ada and whatever happens tomorrow. All right, so stay safe out there. Keep your heads cool. The social media thing can get wild and wacky. I've seen it today. It's getting worse. At least we have each other, and we can all remain calm and focus on this and just kind of close out the rest of the world, maybe a little bit more. Don't close it out completely. I want you to be aware of everything else, but you know what I mean. I just like talking to you, and at least we're all sensible and on the same page. That being said, have a great rest of your afternoon. As always, it's wonderful that you tune in and give me a piece of your day. I appreciate that very much. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.